Margaret Ellison paid for her first-class seat, fair and square. So when a flight attendant quietly asked her to move to the back of the plane, she didn't cause a scene. The rest of the plane did. Margaret wasn't a woman who asked for much. She never had, not during the 34 years she worked for the Atlanta Unified School District, and certainly not while raising 3 kids alone after her husband passed. At 73, she was calm, steady, and had only just begun taking her own advice. Take up space. That's why she splurged on the ticket. Her granddaughter, Kiera, was graduating from Purdue University with a degree in environmental engineering, the first in the family. Margaret wasn't going to miss it. She'd flown plenty before, always in coach, always practical, but this time was different. She booked a first-class window seat, Seat 2A, paid in full. It wasn't about luxury. It was about presence. She walked into Hartsfield-Jackson Atlanta International Airport looking like a woman who knew who she was. Soft gray pants, a matching sweater, gold earrings, and a well-loved leather handbag. Her silver hair was pulled back in a low twist. She smiled at the gate agent not because she had to, but because kindness mattered. "Good morning, Ms. Ellison," the agent said, scanning her ticket. She liked the sound of that. "Ms. Ellison." It still meant something. As she boarded, a few passengers in the front cabin looked up. One man nodded. A younger woman in a jean jacket flipped through a magazine. Margaret reached settled her bag beneath the seat, and looked out the window. The sky was clear. It felt like a good sign. A flight attendant offered her a water bottle. "First time in first class?" she asked, a polite smile tugging at her lips. Margaret chuckled. "Is it that obvious?" "Not at all. You look great. Welcome aboard." Margaret nodded, then turned toward the window, thinking about Kiera's laugh, the years that had gone by. It felt good to sit in that seat, chosen hers. Then came a voice. "Excuse me, ma'am." A different flight attendant now. Younger. Blonde. Her face unreadable. "There seems to be a seat assignment mix-up. We're going to need you to move to 19C. Margaret blinked. "I'm sorry, what?" "There was an upgrade situation and a late arrival. You were placed here by mistake. We need this seat available." Margaret didn't raise her voice. She simply reached into her handbag and retrieved the paper boarding pass she insisted on printing. "This says 2A. Paid for and chosen months ago." The attendant glanced at it, looked down the aisle. "I understand, but we're trying to sort this quickly before takeoff." A woman across the aisle lowered her magazine. "I saw her sit there before anyone else boarded," she said softly. Margaret gripped the armrests, steadying herself. "I'm not trying to cause trouble," she said, calm but firm. "But this seat is mine. If you could please cooperate," the attendant said, leaning in. "Just temporarily." Then a man appeared. Tall, white, mid-40s, holding a laptop bag. The attendant gestured with a smile. "Right this way, sir." But Margaret hadn't moved. He stood next to her row, looking down with polite confusion. "This 2A. "Yes, sir," the attendant confirmed. Margaret spoke evenly. "Handle how? You'll still be in a good seat. We'll compensate you." "Compensate?" Margaret's brow rose. "For being publicly removed from the seat I paid for." The man said nothing. "Ma'am, please," the attendant urged. Margaret looked around. Eyes avoided hers. No one spoke. She taught her students to rise above humiliation with grace, not volume. But what lesson would she be teaching if she just gave up her seat? Still, she unbuckled her belt, picked up her bag, and stood. The attendant exhaled in relief. The man took her place, adjusted his tie, and opened his laptop. Margaret walked down the aisle, silent, toward row 19. The seat was cramped, loud, next to the restroom. A teenager across the aisle offered a puzzled glance. She smiled weakly. It wasn't the seat that stung. It was that she hadn't been surprised. She had spent a life in service, to students, to children, to everyone. And now she was just someone to be moved. Then came a voice. "Excuse me," said the woman in the denim jacket, now standing. That woman was seated first. I watched her. She had a boarding pass. Why was she moved? The cabin fell silent. "We're trying to keep things moving," the attendant replied. "No," the woman said. "You moved her because you assumed she wouldn't say anything." She wasn't the only one anymore. A man in a tiger's cap stood halfway. I saw it too. She was here first. You moved her without cause. Another flight attendant approached, attempting to de-escalate. This wasn't a mistake, the woman insisted. This was a choice. And yes, because she's black. The word dropped like a stone. Margaret felt the heat crawl up her neck. Give her the seat back, someone said. The man in 2A shifted. I didn't ask for this, he muttered. But you didn't refuse it either, the woman snapped. More passengers voiced their frustration. Someone began filming. Another stood. She deserves her seat. Margaret, trembling but clear-eyed, stood. I didn't ask for this, but I won't pretend I didn't earn that seat. The man in 2A stood and left. She walked back to 2A. As she sat, quiet support rippled through the cabin. By the time the flight landed, a video had already gone viral. Captioned, "They tried to move an old black woman from first class." Whole plane said no. Margaret turned her phone on. Messages poured in. Her son, Reggie, called. "Mama," he said, voice cracking. "You're all over the internet." "I didn't do anything special." "Yes, you did," he said. "You didn't let them shrink you." At the hotel, a young woman in a Purdue hoodie approached. "Were you the lady from the video?" Margaret raised an eyebrow. "People are sharing it because it matters," the girl said. "You matter." At graduation, Margaret was seated front and center, a special card bearing her name, Guest of Honor. When Kiera walked the stage, she paused, eyes gleaming. "You made it," she whispered afterward. "Nothing could have stopped me," Margaret replied. The airline released a vague statement. Margaret declined a speaking engagement at their diversity summit. "I didn't speak for your company," she told them. "I spoke because my dignity didn't belong in row 19. A final message from a retired nurse in Arizona struck a chord. "I spent my life apologizing before I spoke. Thank you for reminding me I don't have to." Margaret sat at the gate for her flight home, sipping coffee. She watched planes taxi across the tarmac and smiled when a young girl whispered, "That's the lady from the video." She boarded slowly. Same calm posture. Same window seat, 2A. She didn't say a word the entire flight. Because this time, she didn't need to.